Hey fam, what's up? It's Patrick. So look, I have been so looking forward to sharing this episode from our Patreon feed with you. It's episode 1 of our 2-part coverage of the documentary Who Killed Robert Wone. This is a real whodunit, fam. So here's the setup. It's the evening of August 3rd, 2006. We're in the upscale neighborhood of DuPont Circle in Washington, D.C. at the home of a prominent attorney named Joe Price. So Joe's best friend, Robert Wone, is spending the night in Joe's guest room. It's a little before 11 p.m. Joe, Robert, and the other 2 residents of the house all head to their rooms to go to bed. It had been a quiet night, but within a half hour of everyone closing the doors to their bedrooms, Robert would be dead, having been stabbed 3 times. So what the hell happened? I mean, it seems obvious that the killer had to be one of the other people in the house, right? Well, not so fast, fam. Could it have been an intruder? Also, why is the crime scene, which should be chaotic and gory, so clean with barely a drop of blood anywhere? This has to be one of the most mysterious cases we've ever covered, with twists and turns you will not see coming. So we are giving you episode 1 right now, right here, ad-free. Episode 2 of this 2-parter is available right now and ad-free on our Patreon feed. On our Patreon feed, you get almost 400 full ad-free bonus episodes to download and binge the second you sign up. Everything from Making a Murderer to Serial to The Death of Lacey Peterson. We've done cults, we've done art heists, we've done all the serial killers. It's all right there. And if you're a Spotify listener, you can now get our Patreon feed on Spotify. I know a lot of you were waiting for that. You just open Spotify, search TCO Patreon feed, and it'll do the rest for you. Or you can just go to our website and click on the Patreon link. All right, get ready for this one, fam. It is a doozy. Are you ready for me to blow your mind?
Yes.
Stephen Tipton lived 1.5 blocks from this house when this murder happened.
No!
1.5 blocks.
When did he live there?
He lived there in 2006, but he was on tour when this happened. So he wasn't there, but he had a residence 1.5 blocks from this house.
Stephen Lee Tipton.
Hi, Julian Bentavalli.
Hi, Patrick Hines.
It's a new day. It's a new series.
We're doing something new. We're doing a 2-parter on the Pates.
I love this.
I'm excited about it, too.
All right, let's get into this. You know what? Can I start?
Yeah.
We just get a lot of analogies right at the top. Somebody says, I've always likened this murder to a jigsaw puzzle, but you don't know how many pieces there are. There are lost pieces. There are pieces that are fucking lying to you.
Which I love.
I know.
However,
I know where we're going.
Someone says,
here goes.
This is like the movie Clue. I want to stop on this for a second.
Yeah, please.
He didn't say board game. He said movie.
Oh, you're correct.
And that's how I know he's one of us.
Yeah.
That's a very important distinction because he goes, it's like Clue, only we don't know who Miss Scarlet is. I was like, she was actually played by Leslie Ann Warren.
Totally.
She's an icon.
She is an icon.
That movie is iconic. I know that's an overused word, but I stand by it.
I know this is about the gays, but it's a little on the nose.
Movie and board game, very, very important distinction. So it's August 2nd, 2006 in Washington, D.C.
It's 11:49 p.m.
We start with a 911 call.
D.C. emergency 911.
Someone needed an ambulance. What's wrong? We had someone in our house, evidently, and they stabbed somebody.
Okay, somebody's inside the house?
I don't know. Someone is bleeding in our house. He's a friend of ours. He was spending the night with us.
Who was the person that stabbed him?
I don't know. We think it's an intruder in the house.
The person that stabbed him, she's still in the home?
I don't know.
It's a frantic phone call. Someone has been stabbed, possibly by an intruder, and the intruder might still be in the fucking house.
Someone broke into our house, evidently, is what the person says.
Let me just say, this is the DuPont Circle area of D.C. We go to D.C. a lot because Steve lived there for 10 years, and we love it, and his family is there. This neighborhood is so fucking cute, and these row houses are so adorable. Steve was saying today that whatever the address is, that street's only like a block and a half long. There was a time that we were thinking about moving to D.C., and this is the neighborhood we definitely would have lived in.
Do you think we would have recorded remotely the whole time?
1,000,000%.
So someone calls, they're hysterical.
Yeah.
And then we meet Glenn, the federal prosecutor.
He goes, after 30 years, if I could pick one case that could accurately be called my white whale, it would be this one.
And immediately after, Bernie Grimm, the defense attorney, he's like, look, the average lawyer has tried 20 cases. I've tried over 160. So yeah, I know what I'm doing.
I cannot believe you missed an opportunity to say Bernie the attorney.
Bernie the attorney!
Remember Dick the Dick?
I do remember Dick the Dick. But Bernie Grimm, it reminded me of of Trent Crimm, the Independent from Ted Lasso.
Totally.
Who I love. I love Trent Crimm. But he even says, now this is the defense attorney, and he says right from the beginning, look, I'm going to be honest with you. This case has more questions than answers. He says, even I don't really know what happened. And this is the defense lawyer.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty important.
And one of them says, the difference between this and all the murder cases I've handled is everything. Now, this is coded language. We'll get there when we get there, but this is a bunch of gay men and one straight man who's the victim. And there's a lot of like, what's different about it is that they're gay guys.
Yeah.
And they're in a throuple. We'll get there.
We'll get there. Not our victim, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
So remember the guys at the top where this is a jigsaw puzzle and everyone's fucking lying and the Clue movie? They're David and Craig. They're bloggers, and they started a blog called Who Killed Robert Wone?
Oh, God.
So it happened right down the street from both of them. So this is very local to them, and they're passionate. They're smoking cigarettes. They're cursing up a storm.
They're smoking cigarettes inside. I don't. Know. It's 2023. What are we doing?
Fellas, if you can quit smoking. I know this is a big ask, but let's all watch Clue one day.
Yes.
Clue party.
So August 2nd, 2006, it's the night of the murder. We meet Jeff the EMT. He's first on the scene. Jeff's seen it all, I feel like.
And at the time...
Except this was new even for Jeff.
Right. At the time, he had 15 years of experience.
Yes.
So he's like seen a lot, right?
We arrived at the scene at 11:54 p.m.
There they are.
I noticed the gentleman standing on the front stoop. He was wearing a white robe. And he said, stabbing on the second floor. His head was down, his eyes were closed, and he wouldn't turn toward me.
But like this guy is on the front stoop. He's wearing a white robe. There's been a murder. He's in a white robe.
And his hair's wet.
Yes.
So he won't turn and look at Jeff, which is like, okay, if I don't know how I would act if that happened to me.
I gotta tell you, like, I want to say to Jeff, just the facts, sir. Like, he's definitely editorializing a little bit more than I want him to as an EMT.
Right. So Jeff goes upstairs because the victim is on the second floor.
Yes.
He sees another resident of the house also wearing a towel.
Yes.
And Jeff says, hey, what's going on? And the person doesn't answer, goes into a bedroom and closes the door. Jeff goes, my antenna went up.
I mean, there's been a murder in your house. The intruder might still be there. Like, I'm not saying you all have to be me with your fucking hair on fire.
But someone was screaming hysterically on the phone, 6 minutes ago? You just said they just got here. And now everyone is freshly showered in their bathrobes?
And you're in your room with the door, like you're closing the door? What?
You're not responding to the EMT who's trying to help the situation and get to the bottom of this?
So Jeff goes into the front bedroom on the second floor. This is where he notices a man in his underwear sitting on the bed. He had his back to Jeff. He stands up and says, I heard a scream. And that's when Jeff encounters the victim laying on the bed.
Right. His name is Robert Wone, and there's no blood anywhere.
But there are 3 big stab wounds on his chest.
And so Jeff says it looked like Robert was stabbed and then washed up and then put back in bed because...
Like, he says showered. It's as though they showered the body.
And like they're all in bathrobes with wet hair.
Yeah.
When we got him in the back of a medic unit, I looked down at his chest and I noticed surgical incisions. Something you see a doctor do, and it looked like he had been wiped down with a sheet or a towel.
He doesn't call them stabs. He calls them surgical incisions.
And what he's saying to us is that, like, after his 15 years of experience, it looks like Robert bled out, but there's no blood anywhere.
And, like, everyone is going to say to us, like, in stabbings like this, like, one guy will say to us eventually, I've been on scenes where one guy dies of one single stab wound, and there's blood. It looks like a slaughterhouse, they say. There's blood everywhere. There's, like, a little bit of blood on the bed, a little bit of blood on the pillow. There's 3 stab wounds on this guy's body, but no blood on him.
Let me ask you something. The two of us both had, semi-recently, me and March, you last night, we both had some pretty minor injuries with blood involved. You said you hit your head last night?
Yes.
You bled a lot, right?
A lot.
I sliced my finger. The blood was like nothing I ever imagined that something this small, which looks great, by the way. All healed up. The human body's amazing and terrifying. Oh my God. But there was more blood than I thought. I came home, there were drops of blood all over the kitchen.
Yep.
So it's just weird having had an experience that I know does not compare to this. But like, that's the point. It was like, we're slicing a tomato for a quesadilla.
I get it. But like, while we're talking about antennas, Jeff, my antenna's up a little bit too, because it's kind of like, okay, it's clear these guys are gay. It's the gay part of town. They're in bathrobes with wet hair. Like, if they didn't do this, they've just suffered like a major fucking trauma too. And it felt like they were describing that scene from Eyes Wide Shut with like the sex party where they all have the masks on and it's very like clandestine and a little bit dirty and I was just kind of like, they're just gay dudes.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I never saw that movie, but I know the scene. Is it good?
No.
Oh.
It's whatever. But like,
it got a lot of hype because it was like sexy.
Exactly.
Okay.
But like, that's my point. Like, they are acting kind of strange, but like a man's just been murdered in their house and they're gay guys in like fresh, clean white bathrobes.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I completely agree. I think we're going to deal with a lot of homophobic bullshit here. In fact, I know it. But I also do think like, but your hair's still wet. He just showered. But it's weird.
Yeah.
So who are these guys? Let's get into it.
I learned that the three guys were Joe Price, Dylan Ward, and Victor Zaborski. And they all lived in the house together. Joe, he was the talker. The whole story was somebody broke in and murdered their friend, Robert, who happened to be staying the night.
Joe's kind of in charge here.
Yes.
Joe did all the talking, but all three of these men lived in the house together. And Joe tells us that Robert, our victim, was spending the night. They heard a scream. They run in. They find Robert dead. They call 911. They mention that the back door was unlocked and no one heard anything until the screams and then this horrible scene.
And just to be clear, Joe and Dylan and Victor, they're all gay. Joe and Victor, they're not married because that wasn't legal yet. They're domestic partners, they call them. We'll learn that Dylan is also in this relationship, but like Joe and Victor share a bedroom. Dylan has his own room on the second floor, which is the same floor where the body was found. The body of Robert Wone, he's our victim here. He was not gay. He was a straight man.
Yeah. And they all say, like, Joe and Victor are married, for lack of a better term, together, exclusive. And then, like, Dylan has come in, and they even say that he's, quote, not equal. And maybe they're, like, auditioning him that maybe he will be one day. But right now, like, he's described as sort of the third wheel.
And you know what? Live and let live. Don't judge that. If that's not for my marriage, but, like, that's theirs.
I'm not judging it. I just think a dynamic is important.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I wasn't saying you.
Yeah,
just in general.
Okay, great.
Because it's hard. Like, especially for 2006, that is an unusual situation.
Of course.
We all bring our own baggage to learning things like that about people. It's unusual for me. I would never have a marriage like that.
Yeah.
When I say don't judge, I guess I'm talking to myself because I'm trying not to judge.
Yeah, but I think that's important, like, just the dynamic, because when they say that Joe was in charge, he shot Dylan, the, quote, third wheel, a look that says, like, stop talking.
Stop talking.
So he was sort of directing everyone with their eyes, and Dylan sort of got the brunt of it.
Yeah. So Detective Brian, who's like the lead detective, is saying, like, right from the start, he's like the lead detective on the scene, and he's there. And he's just kind of calling bullshit on Joe's story because he says,
Joe gave me the story of there was an intruder. Somebody must have come in through the back door that just happened to be unlocked. And nobody hears anybody come into the house. There was an intruder. I mean, really, who says that? You say, somebody broke into my house. They stabbed my friend. It's just weird.
They even said on the phone, like, an intruder, evidently. Like, it feels... Again, I don't know. I've never been in this situation, thank God, but it just feels a little like just words that you wouldn't really use.
So Detective Brian goes upstairs to the crime scene. It's a pull-out sofa with just a little bit of blood staining. And once again, everyone's like, not enough blood.
And they're saying it, like everything on it, if it's the pillow or the bed sheets, everything just has like a little bit of blood.
Exactly.
You know? And so there's a knife from the knife set in the kitchen that's on the nightstand. Again, just a little bit of blood on it.
But also, like, there's not just blood on it. There's, like, human tissue on it, and they focus on that knife for too long.
But what's important, I think, about the knife is that what kind of an intruder banks on the fact that you'll have, like, a good enough weapon in your kitchen?
Listen, somebody says down the road, if you're coming into a house to rob somebody, you're bringing your own weapon.
Like,
if
aren't
you're coming
you
into a house
prepared?
to kill somebody, you're bringing your own weapon. Like, the story's full of holes.
Major.
Yeah. But they also say that, like, this also wasn't a robbery. Like, in order for the intruder to get to that bedroom, he would have had to have come in through the back door, walked by all the expensive electronics in the living room, up the stairs, around the foot of the bed where the body was found. There's 2 wallets and a fancy watch. Nothing was taken.
And his clothes were neatly folded.
Yeah.
And we also learn, I'm just going to say it now, it was a gorgeous condo, but it was old. It was creaky.
Yes.
You kind of can't walk around.
I mean, it's a row house from the 1800s.
Like, I've been to Salem. I went to the witch house. But you know those old houses? Like, you can't walk without, it's very, very loud. So that was the other thing. It's like someone broke in, and because they said we didn't hear anything, and then we just heard screaming.
Right.
How would you go up this like big grand staircase without hearing anything?
At the foot of the bed on the desk was Robert's clothes neatly folded with his wallet and his BlackBerry. The bed comforter had a perfect crease. The pillow was at the head of the bed with, a perfect head indentation. Nothing was out of place. Nothing out of the ordinary that would say that there was a murder that occurred here.
It wasn't like he had gotten into bed and was under the covers and going to sleep and an intruder came upon him.
Yeah.
It looks like his body was placed here. And this is where we learn that Robert, the victim, has a wife named Kathy. And I was shocked. Like, they save it until this moment for us to learn that Robert is not one of the gay guys.
Right.
And, Joe, the head guy of the house, he's the one that calls Kathy that night. He tells Kathy that Robert has been stabbed and is in the hospital, but doesn't tell her that he's dead.
No. But he wants to get ahead of this narrative, I guess. But now we have Robert's friends here.
Yeah.
Jason and Darcy. And they're just here to talk about like what that must have felt like for them to get this phone call. Jason says, I felt like I got hit by a truck.
Yeah.
They loved him so much.
I mean, they tell us he was like witty and wonderful and insightful, always good to talk to. They say that he got interested in politics and public policy in high school, which is so interesting. He ends up going to William and Mary College, and at William and Mary, he's in a secret society, but it's not like Skull and Bones, everybody.
No.
They do secret acts of kindness.
It's called the 13 Club.
I know.
The whole point was anonymous acts of kindness.
Like, what? I want to join the 13 Club.
Now, I think that's very sweet. I
Yeah.
love that. But you know who else was in that club?
Joe.
Joe Price, the like ringleader. I mean, alleged, whatever, like the head of the house.
Yeah.
Which
And so-
I hate that term, but here we are.
I want to say, like, Joe and Robert met in this secret society, but they are best friends.
Yeah.
I don't want that to get lost. Like, Robert was sleeping over at Joe's house because he needed a place to crash for the night, and Joe was his best friend. Like, had no issue with them being gay. Obviously, like, Joe had been out. Joe's, like, a prominent gay leader in D.C. at this time.
Like Joe and Victor and Dylan, all the gay guys in this relationship,
Yeah.
were like planning a surprise party for Robert. There are photos of them
Right.
all holding the birthday cake. I mean, they all knew each other. They were all very good friends.
Yeah. And one thing that stood out to me, they mentioned it later, but like Robert is Joe and Victor's best friend. He's been murdered in their apartment and they're showing
Nothing.
They're not crying.
No.
They're not screaming. If you got murdered in my house, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, oh
Yeah, I
my
know.
God.
Yeah. No one heard a thing and there was
Right.
no, like all these suspicious circumstances.
And it just seems like they are very quickly trying to deflect guilt.
It's weird. They don't have a lot of emotion, but they also have a lot to say.
Yes.
You know, they wanted to call Kathy first. And
But we learned that after going to William and Mary, Robert, the victim, went straight to law school.
Robert had not dated a lot of people. He met Kathy in 2002. He came back from a weekend. He said, I think I met the woman I'm going to marry. I was like, this is so out of character for you. What are you talking about? He's like, no, I met the right person. It was quite the kind of whirlwind meeting, engagement, and then wedding. Stunningly fast.
they were just like super in love. And so Robert wanted to work for Radio Free Asia because someone says his motivation was to make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
Like-
and Radio Free Asia is based, or was at the time, in DC.
Right. So now we get back to the night of the murder. It's 4:02 a.m. and that's when the police interviews start.
And we see, like, they separate the men.
Of
So
course.
Dylan and Victor and Joe are all taken downtown. They're all interviewed separately, and we have the videotapes of all of them.
Now, this is when we learn that Joe, quote, the leader, is described as, type A, loud talking. He's a partner at a law firm.
And he's like at a prestigious law firm. Like, we learned this house is like a $1.2 million house at the time. I looked it up on Zillow. It's now worth 2.6. I know. But it's like a fancy house in a fancy part of town. Like, they've got money.
Right. But he's also like, keep your mouth shut. You work at a law firm?
Well, and Joe, like, see, this is the tough part because I had the same question. Like, Joe is an attorney. Why isn't he saying, fuck this, I want a lawyer,
Yeah.
or I'm leaving?
Or I
And
know my rights. I don't have to say a thing.
Bernie the attorney, who's Joe's attorney. Sorry, Dick the Dick and Bernie the attorney.
Bernie, I'm sorry. You must have been hearing that your whole life. And here it is again.
I know. Bernie the attorney is saying that Joe cooperates because he believes that, like, he can get himself cleared quickly and they can go out and look for the real killer.
Right. Now, Victor, they describe him as Joe's husband, but again, domestic partner, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it. He's more on the quiet side, but he worked for the International Dairy Association.
He's the point person on the Got Milk campaign.
Are you kidding me?
I know. Not since my favorite TV series, Sisters, when Frankie worked for Carlotta, have I been so excited to find out that somebody
Carlotta.
worked for the dairy industry.
Oh my God. Are you watching those DVDs I bought you?
Jillian got me every season of Sisters on DVD and a little DVD adapter for my computer. I've watched it like 5 times.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Oh my God, I love it so
Because
much.
sometimes those gifts are like, oh, great, now I have homework. I have to put it in this
Oh
adapter.
no!
Okay, good, good, good.
Sisters, are you kidding? It's
Okay.
a great. It's nowhere in syndication, not even on Lifetime. It's the
I couldn't
greatest show
believe
of
it.
all time.
I couldn't believe it. Now Dylan, remember the like new person in this
He's like
polyamorous
the young
relationship?
hot one in this house.
He has a degree in child literature and he's a masseuse.
and he's also like, if Joe is being like loud mouthing and he's got a lot to say, Victor's being a little like scared and whatever, and like Dylan is like not really talking at all.
But Joe, the leader, is the closest to our victim, Robert.
The detectives came to learn pretty quickly these 3 guys not only live together, this is a 3-way relationship, a polyamorous relationship.
And you and Joe are partners?
Yes.
Does Dylan share an equal partner relationship?
No, not really. I think we're trying to develop it that way.
This is when detectives learn that this is a three-way relationship, which like even for 2023, that would be, I think, a bombshell for like a straight police officer to just like deal with.
Okay.
In 2006, it was even less heard of than it is now. So like this is a big revelation for the cops.
And I feel like it would be a lot easier for them. I don't know if it was like a straight couple and another woman.
Exactly. Or three women.
But the fact that they were all gay
right.
is a big like, whoa, hey, what's going on here?
I think one of these guys probably is the killer. But I think in that moment, the cops are saying like, these are just a bunch of freaky deaky guys.
Yeah.
And because Robert, the victim, was straight, we're going to get a whole lot of like, you were trying to seduce him that night.
Right.
Like,
now,
anyway.
I've also like had people crash at our place because it was easier than getting home late at night after a few drinks. Like crashing at a friend's place is like not that weird to me.
Right. It's not weird.
It's not weird to me.
Yeah, 100%. But the detectives do learn that this was the first time Robert had spent the night. And so, like, they're wondering, like, were these freaky deaky gay guys trying to seduce the straight guy?
Well, this is interesting. So let's go into Robert's last day alive. It's August 2nd, 2006. And Robert and his wife, Kathy, take the train together into the city because they live out in the suburbs, right?
They say it was a typical hot and steamy, disgusting Washington, D.C. summer. Steve and I once went to D.C. in August, and I sweat through all of my clothes.
I have to tell you, whenever we do live shows, it feels like it's always in the summer. We're going to D.C. July 21st.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, my God. Yeah, I mean, D.C. is like built on a swamp, and it feels that way.
But that was their routine. They took the train together into the city every day.
Yes.
So
they get off of the DuPont Circle exit.
They kiss goodbye at 8:45 in the morning. Robert then goes to work at Radio Free Asia. He spends the day there. He had known that he was going to have to be working late. He didn't want to have to take the metro all the way home to Oakton.
So if he had stayed late to meet the Radio Free Asia overnight crew, then he would be coming home late to Kathy, and he didn't want to keep her up because she gets up early in the morning.
The next detail is kind of important because we learn, according to the police records, Robert reached out to two friends. The first person he reached out to was a female friend from college, and he also reached out to Joe, but Joe got back to him first, and that's why he went to Joe's house that night, according to the cops.
But what's also confusing is that we hear that Kathy reminded Robert, no, you're staying with Joe, remember?
Right.
So what's confusing is like, did Robert not know that he was sleeping at home that night or not? Because he calls two friends like it's a last minute thing, but then his wife reminds him that he had already planned to stay with Joe. So I'm not sure what's going on.
I hate staying over at people's houses. Can I just say that out loud?
Yeah.
I always would rather stay at a hotel. You know what I mean?
My God,
it's
totally.
awkward. Like you're sharing bathrooms. I don't like it.
I don't like it either.
And I want to know, like, why not just go home? Like, how long would it take him to get home?
Well, I actually Googled that. So
is this what you were saving for me?
So let's hold tight. Let's do the like. It's 9:30 p.m.
Yes.
Robert calls Kathy, says, I love you.
Yes.
9:40, he meets with the night staff at Radio Free Asia. By 10:24, he's done with work, and Robert calls Joe. And by 10:30, 6 minutes, Robert arrives at the house.
Yes.
Now, I Google mapped everything. From Radio Free Asia to the townhouse on Swan Street is like a 6 to 12-minute car ride at 10:30 p.m. I even did the time.
Wow.
Which makes sense because that phone call between 10:24 and 10:30, fine.
Yep.
A cab ride from Radio Free Asia to Oakton, which is the town, is 22 minutes. At 10:30 at night.
I wonder...
It's not that long of a trip.
No, it's not that long of a... See, the thing that I don't know if we're allowed to speculate here, like, was there something going on with Robert and the gay guys?
Because my thing is, the whole I'm going to get home way too late and wake you up argument doesn't really make sense when he'd be home like 20 minutes later than it would take him to... Like, I've come home when Mike is sleeping. Mike has come home when I'm sleeping. We have a dog now. She barks like when someone is coming in the darkness. Thank you, Fiona, for saving all of our lives. But like, that's kind of not a real...
That's the deal.
Right. But like, to me, when you stay over, it feels like a bigger reason to do that. Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy. It's the one thing. I haven't watched episode 2 of this yet, so I don't know if we get into this.
If it was an hour and a half drive, I'd understand it, but it's 20 more minutes in a cab.
It feels like we're not allowed to ask. And maybe it wasn't anything sexual. Maybe he just wanted to go drink with the gays, and his wife doesn't like it when he drinks. Who knows? But like, was there a reason why he was going to Joe's house?
And the thing is, like, I would...
By the way, if you got a group of gay friends who live in a fancy townhouse in D.C., go drink with them. That will be way funner than going home.
The thing is, I'm sure their bathroom is nicer than anybody else's.
That's true.
You know,
that's true.
They probably actually washed the sheets before you came over.
Yeah.
But like, I would buy into like, I just want to hang out with my friends.
Yes.
If like they didn't all go straight to bed.
Right.
He got there at 10:30.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So we don't know what happened.
Well, we get the round robin of interrogations.
Robert came in. I offered him a glass of water.
I stayed upstairs. We had drinks around the sink.
And we talked about his wife, about his job. It was just chit-chat. And then Joe went outside because he saw a spider or something on the light. We took Robert upstairs, showed him the bed.
He said he was going to take a shower, and then it was all sticky. We said goodnight.
Joe goes outside because he saw a spider on the light.
So this feels like a weird detail to me. Like Joe's putting himself outside the house, like right before everybody goes to bed and Robert gets murdered. Then Robert says he's going to take a shower. This is also weird to me. Like Robert is going to take a shower after like a 12-hour workday before going to bed.
Oh, I totally get it.
But like at your gay
when it's
friend's
hot
house?
and gross out, yes.
Okay.
When like you just, to me.
Great steam shower, I'm sure.
Like a nice chilled shower. But even as a kid, like I love like at the end of a really, really hot summer day, just like taking a second shower, just like to rinse and like go to bed. I love that.
For me, it's less that and more
August
like being
in DC, girl, 3 showers a day.
I get it, but if I'm coming to your house, I'm not getting naked. You know what I mean? I don't like the idea of like getting naked and taking a shower at my friend's house.
Oh, I disagree.
Even though I think I'm very handsome, as we've established.
As we've established in the previous episode. That's the Anna Nicole
I'm
Smith.
just saying, like, there are details about this that feel strange.
Okay, I agree.
Because
the shower in August.
But also, like, all 3 men were showered when the EMTs arrived. So are they trying to put them all in? Like, what's going on?
But, like, the idea that he was just like, I just had a long fucking day.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to take a shower and go to bed. That I get completely.
Tell the people what the gays did when Robert went to get in the shower.
Now, they are watching Project Runway. So, like, but he comes in right smack in the middle of the episode.
Yes.
Now, I Googled.
Fam, before she tells you this, there was a time when Project Runway was without a doubt the best show on television.
Yes, I completely agree. This was a very dramatic episode.
Oh
I
my
Googled.
God.
They were watching Project Runway Season 3, Episode 4.
Which one was this one?
This is the one where that guy got disqualified because he was like sneaking fashion books and like sewing books.
Oh my God, yes.
His name was Keith. He was kicked off in the middle of the episode. He had like design books in the room of the apartment.
Yes, I remember
And he was
this.
also like lying to get a computer and like side Googling like how to sew or whatever. And then the week before, the challenge was like, make 2 outfits for like a fashionable woman and her dog. And he refused to make an outfit for the dog. And Heidi was like, bitch, you could have won, but you refused to do the actual challenge. He refused to make an outfit for the dog, but then he got kicked out.
Wait, that was like the RuPaul's Drag Race episode where the queen didn't want to take her face mask off to do the lip sync for her life, and it was only because she didn't know the words because she hadn't learned the song.
Okay, cheater.
Rue made her do it, and
Good.
Rue was not happy.
I mean, how long have these shows been on the air? But this was like a dramatic episode.
Oh
Someone
my God.
was disqualified and kicked off the program at probably around the 10:30 mark, which is when Robert Wone walked in.
Oh my God.
So for Joe, like, I know this sounds really silly. I know that.
Yeah.
Because Joe says, I watched the last 10 minutes of Project Wone. No, this was an episode that people were talking about.
Yes.
As it was happening, you knew it
Yes.
was a big deal. So for someone, I'd be like, I'll see you in a second. Go take your shower. Hold on. This is really important. Heidi's mad.
Yeah.
Like,
don't bore Nina.
Don't bore Nina. Okay, we'll do a little chat. We're going to go do a little chat.
Who do we hate?
Who do we hate? But like, this was like a really high stress episode
Yeah.
of Project Runway. It was like, it's famous.
Welcome to our Project Runway recap podcast.
Sorry. But I was like, oh my God. So anyway.
I went upstairs, saw the last 5 minutes of the show. The show was over at 11. Got up and brushed my teeth. Joe was switching channels. I knew Victor was getting annoyed, so I turned it off and he went to sleep.
Everyone goes to sleep. Joe's like, I watched just the elimination. Joe, I don't know if you did.
I know.
And everyone wakes up to screams.
Yes.
That's what they say. Like,
Yes.
they went to bed at 11 on the dot.
Well,
They're not discussing that Keith was disqualified in the middle of the episode? Don't you have to debrief?
I know.
Wouldn't we talk about it for an hour?
We would.
Because he didn't make the fucking outfit for the
I
dog.
know.
What are you on Project Runway for? Runway, if you're not going to do the challenges. Remember that woman? Oh my God, what was her name? She was from Australia, and they had to make stuff from like things in New York City, and she just did like yield. She just got like police tape, and she's like, it's like caution. It's like stop or something. And it was just like, she's like, it's like, it's New York City. You should be like caution.
Oh my
Yield.
God.
Remember her? God.
God, this is amazing.
Anyway,
they're all in bed at 11 o'clock. Joe tells the cops. The next thing he knows, he hears a chime. So the chime is like the alarm on the back door, I think. And then Victor and Joe like wake fully up to hearing the grunts and screams coming from Robert's room. They run to the guest room. That's where they find Robert lying there.
Now, Joe says, this is very important.
Yeah.
Joe says the knife was laying on top of my best friend Robert's chest.
He offers this information to the cops.
I moved the knife. I lifted up Robert's shirt and there was a lot of blood on his chest. Now, Victor, who was, quote, hysterical, his, like, for real boyfriend, I don't know what to call them.
You can just say his husband. We'll just say husband, even though they were legally denied that protection at that time.
Yes, exactly. Victor, the husband, who is, quote, hysterical, is tasked with calling 911.
But can I just say a couple things here?
Of course, please.
So, number one, it is so suspicious that Joe is putting his fingerprints and hand on the knife. That's number one. Number two, he's wrong. There wasn't a lot of blood. No one addresses that in this episode. He's like, there was so much blood. There was blood everywhere. Joe, no, there wasn't.
No, there wasn't.
We've seen the pictures. There wasn't that much
blood.
blood.
We spent 10 minutes with poor Jeff, the EMT, being like, there was no blood.
And like, this man was stabbed 3 times. There was a lot of blood somewhere. Like, did they clean it? Where is all the blood?
And remember, Jeff was like surgical, not like stabs, but like surgical.
Oh,
like, what is this?
Yeah.
So they're saying it was a burglar, it was an intruder, all of these things. Now the cops look into the backyard.
It's just a small little backyard and then a 7-foot security fence. It was deadbolted. Could somebody get over that fence? Yes. Did anybody come over that fence? There were cobwebs from the trees to the fences that you can only see if you put your flashlight up there. So you scale the fence, you don't mess up any of the cobwebs, you don't mess up the pollen, you don't disturb any dirt.
This plus the house was super neat, nothing was stolen, and the house is old, the stairs creak, no one heard anything but the screaming. Like, the cops are just like, what the fuck? And also, they're all gay.
Well, exactly.
So not only, I'm sure Joe is arrogant as fuck. Like, I'm sure I wouldn't like him either.
Yes.
But it doesn't help matters that they're in like a, quote, unconventional, like super gay relationship. And that's weird for these cops.
I mean, it's like equivalent to like Damien being the weird kid.
Of course.
You know, you find like the weaklings that you can pin it on or whatever. That said, I think one of them probably killed him.
I mean,
because like there was no intruder. And we'll get more into the prosecutor at the end of this episode takes us actually into the house and shows us what would have had to have happened for it to have been an intruder.
Yeah. And also, like, to your point that no one really feels upset about Robert, like, at one point, Joe's like, you know, this guy broke in, stabbed a guy, and ran off. A guy?
I know.
That's your best friend, Robert. You just threw him a surprise party. There are photos of you helping him blow out the candles. A guy?
I know. And, like, this is, again, where the cops make the point, like, if you're coming to break in to kill somebody or steal something, why would you be, like, counting on, like, it being a cute gay apartment with, like, a butcher block full of knives?
Right. And then you would go upstairs to, like, the guest room to kill somebody with a knife.
Walking right past another room. Like, the other thing nobody says is that, like, was this a targeted hit?
Right. Like, what?
You know?
So back to Dylan. Dylan is, like, the guy in the throuple.
Yes.
No one is talking about where exactly he was. They're just saying, like, Joe and Victor are just like, there's no way he did it. There's no way he did it.
If you remember, like, from Jeff the EMT, Dylan is the guy who at the top of the stairs just, like, closed the door and went back into his room.
Right.
That's Dylan.
So the cops don't really have a theory, but they know it wasn't an intruder. But they're just trying to get the story straight.
Ordinarily, if you get 2 people involved in a crime, you're typically going to be able to break one and figure out what happened. You get 3 people involved in a crime, you're almost certainly going to be able to get one of them, turn them against the other 2.
The other thing about Dylan, because they think that Dylan is the weak link, and because they're all in separate interrogation rooms, they take Dylan out and they take him down to the FBI headquarters where they polygraph him and they ask him 2 questions. Did you kill Robert? Do you know who did? And they say he comes up deception indicated on both.
Now, this is all for leverage because the results are not admissible in court. But the defense makes a good point because he's like, no, the cops just say, you failed. Give us the rest and we'll go easy on you.
Exactly.
Because they can't say, oh, he failed a polygraph because it's bullshit. It's just a way to manipulate you.
And this is when, like, they bring this to Joe and they're like, he just failed the polygraph. And this is where Joe was like, fuck, like, I was really hoping these cops were doing the right thing. They're trying to eliminate me, but they're not. They're looking at us. And this is where Joe decides he's done.
But then Joe, the lawyer, decides to come back.
So, and I just wrote, like, girl, this doesn't make you look less guilty. Like, he leaves and then turns around and comes back.
And when he comes back, he has a different story.
I mean, like, he's a fucking attorney and he's doing everything in the I'm guilty playbook.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
He came back. I can't believe it.
And changed his story.
Right. So at first, Joe says, if you remember, the knife was on Robert's chest.
Like flat across his chest.
I picked it up and put it on the nightstand. Now, Joe says, wait, no, I got it wrong. Here's the real story. Joe says he pulled the knife out of his best friend's chest.
I mean...
And now the point, like, even one of the cops is like, what the fuck?
Because not only, like, would nobody know the difference, your handprint is on it, like, nobody would actually do that. If you find your dead, murdered best friend laying on a bed, you're not going to pull the knife out of his chest and then calmly lay it down on the nightstand.
And if in a panic you see, oh my God, I can't see my friend like that, you don't forget that.
Right.
You don't forget that you said, okay, God, I did something totally wrong. I know I shouldn't have, but I just couldn't see my friend like that and I took the knife. But you don't say, wait, I'm sorry, did I say it was on his chest or did I take it out? You don't forget.
What is the point of changing the story like this? I don't understand. Nobody would have ever known. Unless he's afraid one of the other guys saw him pull the knife out and he's afraid they're going to say that he did that.
Right. So now Dr. Lois is here. She's the medical examiner.
Yes.
And at the time, she'd done about 2,100 autopsies.
I love her.
She finds things that are curious.
Oh.
The first thing that I noticed was 3 perfect slit-like defects in the front of his torso.
These were 3 surgical-like defects. They're nearly identical in depth, width, and orientation.
The uniformity indicating nobody moved. The attacker nor the victim.
And there are no defensive wounds at all. There's no blood on his hands. There's no blood anywhere.
Because what she's saying is, in a stabbing murder like this, if there's more than one stab, the stab marks look different because the person is fighting back.
Of course.
And so the only way, like, imagine you have a cadaver on an operating table or whatever, and you take a knife and you pierce him 3 times, the stab wounds are going to look exactly the same because the body isn't moving.
And now she says the wounds weren't immediately fatal and that he was alive while a blood clot was forming. So now I'm like, she's saying 2 things at once. Like, what is she talking about?
Yes.
She's saying, now hear me out, that he was given something, a drug, and that he was actually paralyzed and could not move.
Paralyzed and hopefully unconscious.
Right. Or like under the influence in some way. Because again, just to make it clear, like the puncture wounds had to be when he wasn't moving.
Yes.
But he also bled out, which means that he was alive.
Right.
So like, how was he not moving? He must have been restrained and paralyzed in some way.
But they're saying they also find, like further to this point, they find puncture, like needle puncture marks on his body. Now, the prosecutor jumps in to say, this isn't that uncommon with bodies that have been treated by EMTs, because a lot of times that can be them trying to put IVs wherever they can, whatever they're trying to do to save life. But they found puncture marks in places that EMTs would not have put them.
And they asked them. They asked the EMTs, and Dr. Lois says these puncture marks were made before he was dead.
Yes.
Shit.
Yeah. So like they found them on the back of his neck, on the back of his hands, on his ankle, on the top of one of his feet.
It wasn't an intruder. It could not have been an intruder.
No. So, August 3rd, 2006, it's the morning after.
News breaks that this prominent member of the Asian community, Robert Wone, is murdered. And there are 3 gay people in the house, DuPont Circle. And the neighborhood of Swan Street was the center of the gay community. Joe Price was at the top of the A-list gay social scene in Washington, D.C.
Joe is like the head A gay guy.
He's
like the head A gay. He's a prominent lawyer. We learned he helped co-fund Equality Virginia. Like, because in 2006, gay marriage was not yet recognized.
Yeah.
President Bush, I remember living this. President Bush wanted to change the Constitution to make marriage legally a union between a man and a woman, to exclude. I mean, what on earth?
But like the point, Joe was on the front lines. He was doing
somebody says Joe was on the front lines fighting for rights and equality that are now taken for granted. And I said, I don't know that we take them for granted.
I was going to say, wait a second.
Just because we're not out there saying thank you, thank you, thank you every single day for these rights that make us equal humans does not mean that we take them for granted.
And let me tell you something. Our rights are getting taken away every day.
Honest to God.
No one's safe. No one can rest.
Safe.
There's always another shoe to drop.
Exactly. But they're saying like he and Victor got a big USA Today profile because in 2006 they helped a lesbian couple have kids because they donated their sperm, which was still kind of unusual back then. So these were like well-known, prominent gays.
And like everyone knew that Joe was Robert's friend. Like this wasn't like a secret relationship. Again, they were all in photos together. They were planning surprise parties. Like all of these friends are like, wait, they're the suspects?
Right. And like one of the Robert's friends that was with us earlier is back to say that one of their other friends sat with Kathy, Robert's now widow, for her interview with the detectives. And it becomes clear to all of them in that moment that the 3 gay guys are being suspected. Because all of Robert's people are like, oh my God, those poor guys, like Robert loved them. They're such good guys. They must be a wreck. And now it becomes clear that no, they're suspects.
And here's another, like,
this is
I don't
wild.
know, Joe.
Yeah.
The night after the murder.
That night, Joe called me and asked if I could talk to Kathy, and I think he used the words waive privilege and share with him what the detectives asked.
Like,
why?
It doesn't make
She wasn't
any sense.
there.
Like, what does either Joe think that Kathy knows? Like, why does he need to know this?
Like, why does he need what?
And why isn't he calling her saying, like, what can I do? How can we help plan the funeral? What do you need? Oh, my God.
Yeah, how can I help? And then even more, Joe, Victor, and Dylan eventually show up to the house and demand a private meeting with Robert Wone's wife.
In the basement, out of earshot and eyesight of everybody else.
So they can bully her?
Yes, and one of the other friends says, I don't know what they said to Kathy in that meeting, but she comes out of that meeting believing them.
Yes.
Thinking that they are also victims here.
Now, Bernie the attorney. Like, we get all of that, which is like damning thing after damning thing.
And like they just making them look like fucking assholes.
And then Bernie the attorney is just like, this is all about being homophobic and people are gay and you don't kill people because they're gay. And I'm like, right, I totally hear you.
Yeah.
But what's with the private meeting and what's with the phone call?
Because both things can be true.
And they
can be murderers and the cops can also be homophobes.
Exactly.
You know?
And like maybe other things weren't looked into because of the homophobia or because they were focused on this, like, whatever.
I mean, we get this one like slice of Joe's interview where like the cop literally says to him, look, we got 3 homosexuals in the house and 1 straight guy. I think you're all drinking wine. Do you know what's going to happen tonight? You're coming to Jesus tonight.
Yeah, no, give
like,
me a break.
What? And then some other cop tells us later, no, they're not homophobes. They're not bigots. They're playing good cop, bad cop.
This is all part of the gig.
We got to get them riled up. We got to get them talking. Fuck you. And Joe,
talk about all things can be true. Like, you're homophobic and you're also like, ooh, I know how to play bad cop. Can I be bad cop? They're fighting over who gets to be bad cop to the gays. Oh my God. So, and also, like, we just go through, like, all of this. Like, here, like, for the intruder theory to be true, here's what had to have happened.
Yeah.
7 feet. The intruder would have somehow had to have catapulted over that fence without disturbing the pollen, the cobwebs. After the intruder drops into the backyard, goes over here, he doesn't get the large knife out of the butcher block. No, he gets one of the modest-sized steak knives and then makes his way through the house into the living room. Not interested in any expensive electronic equipment, apparently.
They run up the loud, creaky stairs.
Now, those stairs are so loud that Joe himself in one of the interviews is like, yeah, that would definitely wake me up.
And it didn't.
And
Joe, you just kept saying it didn't. When you changed your story, Joe, you didn't say also the stairs were really loud. Then, instead of going straight into Dylan's room, which is at the top of the stairs, if he's just there for the sake of intruding, he turns around, goes all the way down to the guest room, doesn't stab Robert right away.
No, this is an important point. Like, if he was there just to kill Robert, he would have opened the door and stabbed him. If the intruder theory is true, that's not what happened.
He walks around the bed,
passing the wallets and the expensive watch.
Doesn't steal the wallet, watch, or anything. Stabs Robert perfectly 3 times. Either left the knife in the body or takes it out because Joe told both stories.
Yes.
The intruder leaves the way he came in, bypassing Dylan once again.
And then this, to me, is the most damning part. The killer would have gone down the stairs. The stairs end at the front door.
Mm-hmm.
And rather just going out the front door, he goes back through the living room, back through the kitchen, out the patio where he once again has to climb that 7-foot fence.
And doesn't disturb the cobwebs or the dirt.
Or the dirt on either side of the fence. This did not happen.
This didn't happen. And also, there are 79 minutes in between Robert getting there and the 911 call being placed.
So, like, the cops learn why that's important when they canvass the neighborhood. So they're saying these houses, these row houses, like, the way they are built, you share walls with your neighbors, and some of these walls are paper thin. You can hear what's going on in the other houses. And so they're asking the neighbors, like, did you hear anything? Did you hear anything? Well, the next door neighbors to the gay guys, they are this older couple, and they say they religiously, every single night, watch a news anchor named Maureen Bunyan, who's on from 11 to 11:30.
These neighbors were interviewed by the detectives, and they said while Maureen Bunyan was on, which is between 11 and 11:30 p.m., I heard a scream.
That's the only scream that anybody heard that night. And that scream becomes crucial to establish a timeline.
And it happened before 11:30 because they knew she was on. She's off at 11:30.
Yes.
So why did the 911 call happen at 11:49?
So they say the loud scream would have been Victor seeing Robert stabbed on the bed. But he didn't call. So at the very latest, that scream would have been at 11:30 when the news broadcast ended.
Still 20 minutes.
They don't call 911 for 20 minutes.
Right.
And they say, but it could have been anywhere from 19 to 49 minutes that they knew he was dead and didn't call the cops.
Suspicious.
Yeah.
So now, 72 hours after the murder, they search Dylan's room. Remember, Dylan is like the third wheel here.
Pull over.
Pull over, please, God. The cops say we found hundreds and hundreds of sexual devices. Now, we are not a kink-shaming podcast.
No.
Do what you want to do as long as everyone is a human, adult, consenting, awake person. We don't give a shit. But
Sober.
Yes, you can't consent if you're not sober.
Yes.
Some of these things are just, I think, a little bit relevant. Not all of it.
The thing is, they lay out we're talking hundreds of, they're not sex toys. They are.
And we'll get into this a lot more in the next episode. So please don't judge me for what I'm saying now. But some of these things.
I say some of these are downright medieval.
Right. But, some chains or gags or mat or whatever, cock rings, nipple clamps, whatever.
Yeah.
That's not a big deal. But some of these things, things to keep limbs spread apart.
Yes.
And actual whips and things that are wow, okay, these are people who are really into that.
A gas mask with a lock on the back of it. That, I lost my breath when I heard that.
Well, to me, it's still not as bad as what we're going to hear in the next episode.
Yeah.
I think all of this can be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah. But I think the point is, what this said to me was are they into really kinky, but also potentially dangerous if not done the right way, sex play?
Yeah.
And something happened and it went wrong.
Right. And so they do a sexual assault exam.
Because the cops immediately jump to, they tortured and raped this guy.
And so they do a sexual assault exam on Robert. And they find semen on his genitals and inside Robert's rectum.
Which took my breath away.
And you're like, shit.
Is Robert living some kind of secret double life? Or a life that Kathy knows about that he just hasn't told me about?
Right. Or was he assaulted or whatever?
Yeah.
Now, this is where I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
We get the DNA results back. We read the results. It turns out it's Robert's own semen.
The semen inside of him, it's his own semen. It's his own DNA.
Right.
In his rectum. And this shocked me.
Yeah.
That it was his own DNA.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, is there a way, when you're by yourself and you're, I don't know, in a stranger's bed and you want to get frisky with yourself?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how to speculate on this. To me, this seemed strange. So, as a person with this genitalia, I'll say, no, there's not a quick and easy answer to this.
I thought there was maybe, hoping beyond hope, there was a perfectly reasonable explanation.
No, there might be gays that are oh no, it's this thing. But I'm not that gay, so I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know.
I am that gay, but I'm not that.
You're not that
gay.
Does that one get the italics or?
Look, I just read a book. I went through this for a year. I can't do this again right now.
Okay, sorry. But that's how this episode ends, and I was shocked by that.
Fam, thanks so much for checking out this first episode of Who Killed Robert Wone. This is a two-parter, fam. There's only one other part, and it's available right now and ad-free on the Patreon at the $5 level. When you join the Patreon, by the way, you automatically get nearly 400 full ad-free bonus episodes to download and binge the second you join. Also, reminder, you can now get our Patreon feed on Spotify. I know everyone's been waiting for that. Just open Spotify, search TCO Patreon feed, and it comes right up. Or you can go to our website and click on the Patreon link. All right, fam, we love you. Bye.